Hello. Hey, Kris, how's it going? I'm
Good.
Karen. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah, awesome. I'm excited about today's topic. So people are just jumping on. We'll probably wait a couple of minutes for Bart. And while we're doing that, I'll share it out in the Facebook page so that everybody else can get access to this if they're watching from Facebook too.
Cool.
So it'll just be a couple of minutes. And if you are already jumping on Zoom with us, like every week, I love to hear where you're from. Hey, Lisa and Eric, so good to see you. Everybody else, as you're jumping on, let me know where you guys are from. I know Lisa and Eric, you guys are from Kentucky. Hey, Whitney, good to see ya. We've got questions written in already for this episode, Kris. People are excited, so I'm excited to dive in. Cool. All right, we'll give it a couple of minutes here before we start, and I'll just start sharing it out on Facebook. So say hi if you guys are jumping on while I get this all sorted. Hi, Victoria from SRB, Florida. Is that, where is SRB? What is SRB, Victoria? Oh, Fort Myers as well. Awesome. Okay. Dr. Bart's in the house too. Oh, Santa Rosa Beach, of course, Victoria. I should have known that one. Hey, Kelly.
I wanted to say hi to Kris.
Hey.
All right. Well, hey, Kris. Good to see you, girl.
You too, Dr. Bart.
Yes, it's. I'm excited to have you here tonight. You might see I got some friends with me. That's Dr. Bob. He's like my partner in crime. He's been with me for a bunch of years now, and you can't see, but George is right here as well. So for just a reminder for the listeners tonight, whether you're on Facebook or Zoom here, if you got questions, put them in the chat. And then if you're joining us from somewhere other than actually, no matter where you're from, go ahead and put in the chat where you're from. Just do a little shout out so we can say hi back to you. Super excited. I'm going to give everyone a little of the details of how I know this young woman sitting across from me. Well, on Zoom, of course. What our connection is in just a moment here. You might have figured a little bit of it out. It had something to do with my wife. Kris, how long have we known each other?
Well, I guess that would be from the moment you met Kelly.
So. Yeah, pretty much, right? Yeah. Which is kind of interesting because I think you guys knew each other prior to me knowing her, which is I think I've always had like an issue with that. Yeah.
I beat you at that. That's all I beat you at. I've known you longer.
Karen, we live on Facebook?
We are live. Awesome. So let's dive in. Before we get started, just want to do some quick intros. So for those of you who are new and might not have met Dr. Bart yet, Dr. Bart has been a healthcare practitioner for over 20 years, practicing a whole range of modalities. So many, in fact, that I always have to look at my list because I can't remember them all. So we've got chiropractic, acupuncture, kinesiology, nutrition and supplementation, and functional testing, all out of his clinic, Balance Health Studio in Seagrove Beach in Florida. So he's also the founder of the Health Edge program, which is a virtual program for executives and entrepreneurs wanting to really optimize their health and take it to the next level. So he's worked with thousands of people all over the world, including athletes and celebrities. And so we're always so grateful to get all your knowledge each week and love the stuff that you're sharing out to the world. This week, we also have a special guest, which we love having because we get another point of view, and we get like you know, some more information that we can share out to our audience. So Kris, we are so grateful to have you on the show. And so Kris Buchanan is not only a former Olympian with her name in the USA Field Hockey Hall of Fame, but also the founder of what I hear is one of the best in the country, amazing organic eatery, which is Good On Ya. And I love the name, Good On Ya Organic Eatery. Yeah, so good. And her mineral hydration supplement, which is Good On Ya Hydrate. We're going to talk a bit more about that later on. So Good On Ya was first established in San Diego in 2001, and the Good On Ya brand is all about making real food that helps you feel good. So we love that. So Kris and her team are crazy passionate about sourcing the very best ingredients for your restaurants and creating a community of awesome people. So through her own healing journey, Kris discovered just how much food is you know, a major contributor in our overall health. And so then became obsessed with making organic, healthy, and super delicious food. So I wish I could fly over and come and check out your restaurant, Kris, but we're excited to learn from you today. So thanks for being on.
Oh, thanks for having me. And I think you have a lot of our food in Australia. You guys were a big motivation for me with the concept of the cafe initially. So good on you.
Awesome. Very cool.
So, Kris, before we get into dive into things, and there's so much I want to cover tonight. This is going to be awesome for our listeners tonight. So, we're going to go into organic food. We're going to go into GMOs. We're going to talk about Gatorade. We're going to like dive into all that. But I also want to get into your story, like your journey, like how you've turned probably what was a lot of pain in your life all the way into purpose and then passion and then even I should hopefully even profit for that matter. But that being said, before we go, I want to give a little backdrop here and just give everyone a little bit of info and how you and I know each other. Literally the first time you and I met was probably out in San Diego at the Olympic Training Center. That's my guess. So my wife and Kris, so Kelly and Kris were our teammates, and they were not just teammates, but they were kind of inseparable, and they were the troublemakers, no doubt. Like that was their gig. Like if something was going wrong, it was probably because one of those two were doing it. They had a third one in on this as well. Anyway, so I ended up falling in love with Kris because she was such a big part of my wife's life. And ever since, I've always considered her a great friend of mine. And then over the years, she's become brilliant at what she's doing. And then Kris, I believe you and Kel both lived in Australia for a little while. Is that correct? Playing hockey?
Yeah, we would go down for just on and off for when the US team had time off, we would go there and hook up with a club and just keep playing and experience the travel of it all. And yeah, definitely fell in love with Australia, no doubt.
Yeah, so it's good. So they both played in the 1996 Olympics, and that's where I was fortunate to meet up with Kelly then. And then I had the opportunity. It was such a cool opportunity for me when I got to travel with you guys. Yeah. I still remember, I think it was at the World Cup, but I remember like in between the games or the halftime stuff, I'd get to, behind the scenes, I'd get to go in with all the other doctors from all around the world. You know, men and women who couldn't even speak each other's language, but we had that common bond to like help these athletes. And we would just show up with whatever our best toolbox was, and we would just share techniques and all this different stuff. It was an incredible experience for me, even though, you know, I wasn't in the World Cup, I wasn't the one playing, but I had such like an incredible experience from all these practitioners around the world. And that was one of my fondest memories of watching the girls play there. And, so good stuff there. Good stuff. So thank you again for being here. I want to dive right in. So we're going to definitely talk about organic food. I want to talk about your restaurant. I definitely want to talk about your drink tonight, that Hydrate. But before we do any of that, tell me a little about your story. Like, because, you know, we missed each other for a couple of years, and tell me about the story. Like, you know, bring me through, you know, being an athlete, you know, for probably a full decade of competing on an Olympic level as an athlete. And then what happened? And then how do you end up here?
Yeah, I mean, and sadly, I think it's a common story. I think people are shocked when they find out what athletes eat. You know, sports food, junk food, but you can kind of eat anything you want because you're a teenager or you're 20, even 30. So your body's still kind of in this really great growth, peak performance state. And you're burning it off. And so we kind of equate health with being overweight. You know, we're 7% body fat, 10% body fat. So we didn't think we were doing anything wrong. So what are you going to eat? You're going to eat broccoli, you're going to eat Oreos. And especially when they give you this kind of stuff for free at the Olympic training centers, at the Olympics, you know, you've got the biggest kind of junk food companies in the world that are Olympic sponsors. When you really tell people that, they're like, what? Like, they can't even imagine it, but it exists. And so, you know, also traveling around the world, we'd be in places like Korea, and, you know, they might have buckets of fish like out in front of the restaurant, you know, on the ground. And as a young kid, you're just like, what is that? And now I know that's natural and healthy and probably pretty awesome to have, even though we were afraid of it then. But we just ate junk food. I in particular I grew up just kind of a sugar junk food kid. An entrepreneur very early on, would go and get like seashells and deliver them door to door and try to make money so I can go buy candy. I mean, my whole life revolved around getting candy. We just were professional, like, candy kids. My dad even put up a sign across the street because we were too little to cross the street, and there was a vending machine over there before our neighborhood was even built out. There was one gas station with one vending machine, and we would steal money out of our parents' purse and little drawers and run over there and try to buy candy bars. And one day I got over there and there was a picture of me on the vending machine that said, if you see this kid, call me. So my dad knew we were sneaking across the street, and he nailed us.
You know, it's interesting you say that. I remember going to that Olympic Training Center and going to the cafeteria. And I can remember going in there and seeing like these big rows of donuts and just like all these other foods. And I remember, there was other healthy food there, but I remember thinking to myself, man, these are world-class athletes that are just kind of getting the run of the mill. It was an eye-opener for me. You know, as a young healthcare practitioner, it was an eye-opener that, man, just because you're an athlete doesn't necessarily mean you've gotten the nutrition or the lifestyle down. And something you said there, Kris, I think is real important for everyone listening tonight. Sometimes you can get away with it. You think you are. You think you're getting away with it, little bit by little bit. And you said that your thing has always been sugar. But, you know, I think living in our country, we know even if it's not sugar, it's carbs. And for me as a practitioner, I tell everyone, like, you're addicted to carbs and sugar until you prove otherwise. And how do you prove otherwise? Go without them. That's it. It's, you know, that's the evidence. So, and I put myself in that category. I'm both. You know, unless I choose otherwise, it's sugar and carbs for me. Now it's more carbs. I don't like the sweetness anymore. But I don't think that's a rare story, quite frankly, that you ran around doing what you could for sugar.
Yeah. And I think, you know, when you combine that, I mean, as you know, with the stress of competing and the hormonal stress that puts on your body with the insulin response. And then when I retired, I had opened a bunch of restaurants, and it just was too many restaurants too quick, you know, but I was 30. I was still kind of kicking ass and working all day long, and then going home and running my yellow lab for an hour and then going surfing. We were just used to 8-9 hours of physical activity we did some days. You know, the minimum day would be 3 hours, but that was like an easy day. So when we went into, you know, standing up for 8 hours and dealing with the stress of opening your own business, probably 5 years into it, it just pretty much came crashing down. I was exhausted. I was getting sick all the time. I got like a flu or infection or bronchitis or something that lasted like 3 weeks. I just couldn't get better from it. And, you know, it just, to feel good all the time and, you know, to run 6-minute miles and do all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, not even being able to put your wetsuit on to go surfing. You don't even have the energy, just wanting to go home. I really started to feel depressed, and I thought, well, what's wrong? I got my own business. I live at the beach. I have a family who loves me, lots of friends. I'm really lucky. Like, I'm not depressed, but I felt depressed. And people are like, no, you got to take antidepressants. And it just didn't resonate with me. So luckily I got to see a naturopath. You know, we're in Southern California. One of my friends here owns a compounding pharmacy, and she said, you need to see a naturopathic doctor. I didn't know what that was. And so I went in and I had full-blown Hashimoto's. You know, my antibodies were out of control, over 10,000, and it all made sense. So that was 12 years ago now. And It's been a journey from that point, and I still battle every day to do the right thing for my body. It's not easy. And I've gone through phases where I wasn't, oh, this is bullshit. I don't need to be gluten-free and all, it's definitely a frustrating time. But then you get into the vibe of it, and you learn what real food is and what straight up chemicals are. And so things that used to tempt me, I don't even look at as food anymore. And I'm on the mend now, but Hashimoto's, celiac, also my pancreas was under attack. I luckily, by making the change, I don't have type 1 diabetes now. And I was on that path, which, that's a pretty serious condition. And once those numbers came back pretty high, I was like, okay, I get it. But it took a lot to push me to that point to make changes.
Yeah. So for our listeners to understand that, so Hashimoto's, what you got diagnosed with, that's an autoimmune condition. And oftentimes when people hear that, say autoimmune, what does that mean? It means literally your body's attacking itself. And I know you've learned a lot since then. So I want to dive in a little bit about the precursors that happen, because it doesn't happen by accident, it doesn't happen by bad luck. And all those things that you're experiencing, they're real. And for people out there right now that, maybe their health is a little bit challenged or whatnot, and they listen to those symptoms and they say they're fatigued, and they have reasons in life to be grateful, yet you're not feeling it because you're physically not feeling it. You're fatigued, your body's run down, you might feel depressed, your libido might be down, your skin's changing, maybe your body weight's changing, all those different things. Those are real. And like you said, Kris, sometimes, the struggle's real emotionally, because this is a relentless pursuit of health and wellness. I call it the superhuman strategy, meaning that to be human, it's like our bodies are built to just kick ass. They really are. We can just take on so much. We can go 3, 4, 5 decades of putting crap in our body and do decent. That's just human status, but superhuman status is when we do more than that. And then we find out what our bodies and our minds are capable of, and fighting off things as well. So let's talk a little about that Hashimoto's, because I know that's not the only thing you dealt with, but so people know that Hashimoto's is a condition that has a lot to do with your thyroid. Your thyroid starts to underwork, and you end up getting hypothyroidism. And the thyroid plays a massive part of energy in the body. And what a lot of people don't realize about the thyroid too, it actually cleans your body. That's what that little thyroid hormone is doing. Every hour it's circulating, everything's pumping, all your blood pumps right through that thyroid gland, and it's trying to clean your body out of toxins. And when that thyroid gets beat up, boy, you got yourself a big hole you've dug yourself into. So tell me what else. I know this story goes a little farther.
Yeah. So I started diving in and taking control. I went back to school, got my holistic nutrition certificate. I started podcasting, started, honestly listening to guys like you and just diving in. And one day, one of my employees came to me and she said, "Did you know there's canola oil in our olive oil?" And I said, "Well, what the hell is canola oil?" And so we started looking it up, and it's not even a food, which is crazy times, right? And so I watched a documentary on it and I got totally blown away. And so then you just start going down the rabbit hole. And when you are a food maker and you make food, somebody comes into your business and gives you money and they're going to put that in their body. That is a massive responsibility that we just don't even think about in this country. And because we owned restaurants that were in office park locations, we got to know our customers. They were there. And we have a full service restaurant now. We know our customers, but in the office environment, this corporate America, I swear they don't work. They're down in our restaurant, we're in the lobby 3-4 times a day. I'm like, "Bob, do you have a job?" He's on his break. He's coming down constantly, but we got to know these guys and they became our friends. Some of my employees got married, what I mean? It becomes like your community and your world. You start to care about them. And so once I learned this stuff, I always say it's like the Matrix, you want the red pill or the blue pill, because once you learn it, you're just like, what? It's criminal. It's nothing short of criminal what they're putting in our food, and they're lying to us about it and marketing to us to confuse us. So it's a really complicated issue, and people just kind of don't want to talk about it because it's so hard. But I'll be honest with you, Bart, you're one of the smartest guys I know, and I definitely majored in field hockey. I'm not that smart, but what I have going for me is a lot of common sense. That is just my jam. And so I just look at the back of the package if there is a package, and I look at the ingredients, and then you know what? I Google it. I mean, I just Google it. You used to have to go to the library when we were kids, right? Now the information, I could ask my watch, like, and then you use your common sense. And you'll see one study that proves something on one side and one study on this side. So I just like sift through all that nonsense. And I was like, what does nature tell me? I don't argue with nature, because everyone can make a food study and prove this and prove that. And it's nonsense. So that's what we did. We went one by one through our restaurant with every single ingredient. And it's actually really not that hard. It's time consuming. You know, in the beginning, my wife wouldn't go to the grocery store with me because I'd be in the toothpaste aisle for like 3 hours and she just couldn't stand it. But now, you know, I tell people do one product at a time, dial it in, and then move on to the next one. And then pretty soon you'll change your whole life.
Yeah, that's awesome input right there. Just, you know, literally start with something that we can, you know, like tackle. You know, I don't know if you've heard us talk about it or if you've ever been on or listened to the show before, but always we talk about God's garden as the new meal plan. Like if it comes from a root, a plant, tree, walks in the garden, swims in the sea, eat it. Hopefully it's, you know, organic and non-GMO. And it really doesn't have to get more complicated than that. And back to a little bit just earlier, but part of it is sometimes we almost have to get to this place, not I need to, I should, but really I get to. And that's a superhuman mindset. That's one of those mindsets that we click because, you know, I'm no longer 20. You look like you're 20, but I don't think you're 20 anymore. So we have to start to think, at what point are we going to allow ourselves to just start to level up and raise the bar? So let's talk about this. So like a simple question like this, how often now and just from an honest answer, just like Kris talking, you know, straight to me, with everyone listening tonight, how often is it okay to not eat real food?
I think once you know what the other stuff is, you don't even want it. And literally your taste buds change. Now, look, I am a junk food kid. I still struggle with sugar. I want dessert after every meal. I know there's issues with that part. So it's like, the thing is, okay, I went to Mexico deep on a surf trip, right? We had to go to Costco when we landed in Mexico. It was the only place around, and I wanted peanut butter. And this was probably like 7-8 years ago. The only peanut butter on the shelf was Skippy. And I was like, all right, I'm just going to buy it. I'm just going to buy it, right? This isn't 2020, Kris. This is like 2012, Kris. So I buy it. And I figure okay, whatever. It tasted like plastic.
That's terrible.
I had an organic peanut butter product, and that's what I had been eating, but you know, I didn't have it with me. And so I bought Skippy. It was horrible. I'm not saying McDonald's fries probably don't taste good, but I think that there is a level of understanding when you understand the ingredients that you won't do it anymore. You can't. It's not food.
So let's talk about some of the ingredients, because you know my aim of it in healthcare for a couple of decades, and you know I talk about nutrition all the time, and of course I'm supposed to, right? I'm the health doctor. So, but someone for you who is a food purveyor, a food doctor, right? Talk to me about those chemicals that are in some foods that people don't know of. Let's just take something simple. Let's just talk like meat. Let's just talk, I don't know, maybe you have a burger at your place or some chicken. What are some of the stuff that people don't know that's in there that is just literally down-regulating their health?
I mean, I think everyone knows about hormones and antibiotics, right? But still, your general meat on the market is still full of those things. But the GMOs probably are maybe, I know it's like this crazy, like left-wing hippie issue, but it's really not. It's just, it's a genetically modified organism that's made in a lab so they can sell more pesticide chemicals, right? There's 4 levels of food. There's the biodynamic and regenerative food. There's organic food. Then there's conventional food, which we all just kind of forgot about. And then there's GMO food, which is, you know, the worst of the worst. Conventional food has tons of pesticides, Roundup poured on top. But when you do that and you kill off the weeds, it also kills the seeds. So they genetically engineer food to either kill off certain bugs. When they bite it, the bug's stomach will explode, right? So what do you think happens to us? So actually the seed.
So, Kris, say that again. Please say that again, and say it so everyone hears what this means when you're taking these genetically modified organisms into our body, and you hear people say that they have pesticides and herbicides. These are chemicals that they spray on the foods to make sure bugs don't eat them. So what happens to the bug?
So the bug, yeah, the bug dies. Their stomach explodes and that, like that. And inside, to get these chemicals to sort of latch on to the DNA of the seed, they're using viruses and bacterias to get that to latch on. So now we're going to consume that. And some GMO activists say that DNA is then latching onto our DNA. And then there's a continual pesticide process happening inside our body where it just keeps emitting pesticides. I mean, it's really science fiction. And, you know, you'll have GMO proponents say they're saving the world from hunger and all this nonsense. Well, they've been in our food supply since 1996. 1 in 5 kids goes hungry in Washington, D.C. alone every night. They haven't solved world hunger. They're not even food. And they just really exist to sell chemicals. But I think, you know, artificial colors, artificial flavors, and artificial sweeteners, those 3 things are pretty well known. But there's also artificial preservatives that are really gnarly. And they just should be avoided at all costs. They're literally all made in a lab by scientists. I picture them like mad scientists. They're coming up with drugs. They're coming up with pesticides. And then they like accidentally get some on their hands and go to pick up some paper. And they're like, oh, ooh, that's sweet. Let's put it in all the drinks on the market. And that's how these things have evolved. It's just crazy. But there's plenty of studies on the FDA website that says they're safe.
Yeah, you know, that's the interesting thing, and as you know, that's the challenge that we have. If you go that way and you think that maybe these man-made foods are better for us, then you might get lured in because they'll back it up with some stuff. And that's why we always try to say, God's going, like, sometimes it's not that complicated, and we just have to go back and be like, what is natural? What was here for a couple thousand years? What can we put into our body? And the link there, and I know you understand this, that if you put something in your body that's derived from nature, we naturally have the ability to handle it. So going back to things like, you know, these autoimmune conditions, Hashimoto's, so how do they get these? The general push off would be, well, there's nothing you can do about it. It's autoimmune, your body's heck. We don't really know why, but we do. We do know that when we run the body down repetitively, just beat the snot out of it over and over and over again, it makes the body vulnerable. And that's what we're looking at when we start thinking about Hashimoto's. And I think you told me off air that you had another autoimmune condition. Is that correct?
Yeah, celiac as well, which is no fun.
Yeah, no fun. And so and I'm going to dive into that a little bit, not putting you on the spot and telling everyone your medical history here. But these things go hand in hand. And as a clinician, I see these two go hand in hand, Kris, all the time. And so for people that don't know, celiac is when you have like a full-blown allergy or an immune response to gluten. So, and I'll talk about gluten sensitivity in just a moment because it's important to understand here. But, and there's actually a genetic gene, I don't know if you ever got tested for it, for celiacs, that you can have an antibody. And that's how they really come down with your diagnosis. They test you for this antibody. There's a lot of people that have them. It's not uncommon to have the gene, but not everyone expresses celiacs. And this is so important for us to understand. So when people say, oh, it's genetic, you had the gene, but it is your lifestyle that expressed this gene, which is really, really important. So I'm guessing somewhere along the line, you figure out I have Hashimoto's, I have celiacs, and then you're like, man, I guess apparently gluten's got to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because not only did I have those, but my antibodies were also wreaking havoc on my pancreas. So, you know, when they tell you you're going to be injecting insulin for the rest of your life, that really put the fear of God in me. So that's what made me change. But the diagnosis, it took a long time. You know, I didn't know I had celiac until years after I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's. Mm-hmm. So the testing has gotten better, and we've all gotten a little bit smarter. So,
you know, I generally across the board at this point, just tell all my clients, anyone who'll possibly listen here, even on the, you know, our shows, just get gluten out of your life. It's no longer serving us. Most people's bodies, even if they could have handled it at one point, can't handle it anymore. And a lot of times it'll lead you to, most likely, hon, your celiac was the first thing to show up. You just didn't know it. And it drove the Hashimoto's. It pushed it into that thyroiditis. Hashimoto's, as you know, is, you know, it's you have antibodies beating up, that you're making antibodies that are beating up your own thyroid. And the interesting thing, and I know you know this, but just for our audience, that the gluten molecular structure looks a lot like the thyroid molecule, the hormone. So they both look like this. And if you have something called leaky gut, which most Americans have to some degree, that gluten gets out of the gut and into places it's not supposed to be. So your body starts to attack it. And once it starts to attack it, then it also starts to attack your thyroid. And that's how a lot of these autoimmune conditions start. So talk to me a little about gut health and food. Like, where do they, you know, immune system, like how'd you get this recovery going? Because, I know you're much healthier now, and I get that it's a journey. So bring us along the way here. What'd you do?
Well, yeah, you just start literally looking at every single ingredient and questioning it. It's not that hard. It really isn't that hard. Getting the gluten out, because I tell people it's like, think of it like Wonder Bread when we were growing up. You know, you can make them into like little balls and they were like glue. That's just sort of undigestible. There's a really cool documentary called Cooked on Netflix by Michael Pollan. He also wrote a book called that, but there's 4 1-hour episodes. The second one is called Air. It's like air, water, fire, earth. And he's a real food kind of activist. And he shows you, had we been eating naturally leavened bread with proper, you know, they have hybridized, not genetically modified, but they've hybridized gluten over the years to be more glutinous, because that helps bread go around the machines when they're making it en masse, and they don't use the natural leavening process, which makes bread digestible. So it's really a bummer, because had we been eating the good stuff all along, this might not have happened, along with all the other food that kind of ruined our gut. But yeah, you know, I mean, being in the food business, it was easy. I just changed my whole menu, and I got smarter, and I just started looking at gut healing foods and trying to get as much into my body as I could, and really just stopping throwing the fuel on the fire too. Stop eating the junk, and just trying to eat real food. People are like, should I be paleo? Should I be vegan? And there's all this confusion. And I was like, let's just, like you always say, we're just using different words, just foods from nature. If everyone started there, we'd be like 95% there. You just get junk food out of your life.
Yeah, an important thing I think you just said there is, at some point you got to make the decision to stop feeding the fire.
Yeah.
So there's a couple things that take place there. So when you feed the fire, and let's just say that's GMOs or just crap, you know, there's chemicals that you put in your body recognizes that as a foreign invader. Like, it could be a virus, it could be a bacteria, or it could be a chemical. And when that happens, your body's under duress. That's stress. Remember, never mind like life stress, but that is stress by itself. One of the interesting things that it's really interesting, under prolonged stress, the body produces a hormone called cortisol, which is great when we're athletes and we're, you know, banging around and we need it for inflammation. But prolonged, this is real interesting about the immune system and where we develop these autoimmune conditions, is that prolonged stress actually shrinks your lymph nodes. It makes them smaller. And that's where your white blood cells come for your immune system. So that prolonged stress downregulates the immune system. In the very front end of that, when people are under a lot of stress, they dump all their antibodies. And then under stress, you don't make your antibodies. So you end up naked and you keep fueling the fire. And then life. So the way you're talking with your story, you know, you're an athlete, you know, you're 20 something, just crushing it, whatever. You don't have to really pay attention. So you keep fueling the fire. You're using, that's God's will of just your body's so healthy, so natural, etc. And then you keep going, but you haven't stopped the fuel. You keep, and then eventually this thing starts to burn out and your body starts to break down a little bit. So let's dive a little bit more into Kris's life. So now we know some of your medical background. Let's talk about lifestyle stuff. I know you're an entrepreneur, and I know you, ever since I've ever met you, I love the way that your mind works. I know you're an athlete. I know you love to surf. How much has lifestyle and Kris's personal life been a player in you getting back to, you know, being what we like to say, getting on the path of being superhuman or being the best version of yourself?
I mean, I can honestly say that, you know, as much as food is important, the stress, like, wow, like I had been really good, like diet good, getting my numbers good on my blood test. And I went through a really particular stressful time in my life when we raised money for a product that I started, hired a bunch of people. It didn't go well. We couldn't manufacture it like, there we are. We couldn't manufacture it in mass like we did by hand. So we had all this drama. You know, we got into all these Whole Foods. Whole Foods was going to take us national. Then we couldn't perform. We couldn't literally deliver the bars. REI, we had all this opportunity and we totally blew it. And I had to like fire people, let them go. That year of like raising money from your friends and like the whole stress of like, hey, invest in me. It was like, oh, it's horrible, right? And then not succeeding was bad. I still don't like to think about it. And I went and just did my yearly blood check. I just actually do it twice a year, and my numbers were out of control. And so because I was kind of a dork and always did my blood and liked to see the numbers and where I was going, I had all these results, and these were the worst that I had had in 10 years. And my doctor was like, my naturopath, she's like, this is the chart of someone who's going to have a heart attack. And, you know, and I weigh like 120, like I'm super, you know what I mean? Like you just don't see it. But it was all this internal stress I was putting on myself. And luckily for me, that was another good eye opener by being proactive and going and getting my tests and paying attention to what's going on in my body. I was like, okay, I just totally understood what stress does to my body now. And it's still, being in the restaurant industry is not easy. So I have to just be kind of aware of that, deep breathe, try to respect my personal time. Like, it's tough, but
one of the things
can do so.
Yeah. One of the things you just said there that really rings a bell, and I want all of our listeners, everyone on Facebook and Zoom tonight, to really hear this, that we always have to allow ourselves to have some level of accountability. So, and your accountability was going to get your lab work done twice a year. If you didn't do that accountability, you probably would have kept driving the ship. It gives us that moment to look and say, what's going on. So earlier, Karen mentioned I have a program called the Health Edge, and it's for entrepreneurs. They're for people that, I call them a bunch of knuckleheads, men and women, that they're just built to drive, and they forgot to pause. They forgot to fill the tank. Like, they don't do that. They just run out of gas and then they fall off the cliff or whatever. And for that very thing, that accountability is so important that, many of us, and if you're head of a family or you're head of a business or whatever it may be that you are in life, as an adults, we suck when it comes to accountability. So whether it be lab work or something, I don't care if it's getting on a scale, and that's not a great one, but the lab work is really, really effective, especially once we're not 20, of moving ourselves and seeing what's going on with our body. Like, what are your cardiovascular measures doing? What is your thyroid doing? All of these things, because when we're in the middle of it and we're deep into it, it's hard for someone to convince us that we need to be doing it a different way.
Yeah. It's kind of shocking if you think about that that it's not kind of just a standard of care, Okay. I mean, you and I could talk about that all day, but even if you do go get your lab work twice a year from a regular medical doctor, they'll run one thyroid marker and there's like 8 or something. So, and then if you have the autoimmune version, they're still treating it exactly the same way and not even talking about diet. So there was another girl on our team. She was about 4 years older than Kelly and I. She went to the '88 Olympics and opened a restaurant when she retired here in San Diego. And I don't want to call her out, but she had Hashimoto's as well, and did that path. Didn't really change. And then like 10 years into it, had like a full digestive meltdown, and then had some serious issues. So luckily I had learned from her mistakes, and that was another reason I had gone to the naturopath. But it just shows you, we just let this stuff go. And then we're like, oh, whoops, we have all the technology. We have it all here.
Because it can be like, I know for me, I'm the same. Like, unless, to be honest, and maybe then that counts me as a knucklehead, but I'll like keep going until I like see those numbers. Like, unless I do the test and see it. But it's sometimes hard to find out where to go. Like, you were great that you had a naturopath that you went to. So just quickly, because Dr. Bart, you run all these tests for people, and people can actually do these from anywhere if they did want to do them with you. Is that right?
They can. So we can send tests across the country. Doesn't matter, and anywhere. And these, and like Kris said, sometimes you get like a thyroid panel, and I tell you, 9 times out of 10, when someone says, "Oh, I got my thyroid results," and I look at them and like, "Awesome," and we need some more. Because you want to know the whole picture, because for most people, you'd run in and then most doctors would never pick up Kris's Hashimoto's because they don't run the antibody tests. or they don't run reverse T3. It tells us this is a stress component. We need to know those things to be able to properly understand what's going on with the physiology, so we can then, you know, find a good protocol for it. So yeah, Karen, anywhere, anytime, they can just reach out to us. Maybe someone could put our link in there, and if they want to contact me directly, they can do that.
Yeah, okay. We'll put the link to the Balance Health Studio in the chat and put it on Facebook, guys. Just if some of this resonates, if you're like, oh, this might be something I'm dealing with as well, you know, you can reach out and get an appointment so that you can kind of dive a bit deeper.
Yeah. So Kris, I want to back up a little bit about the autoimmune conditions, and I think it's such an important thing and I know we're going to continue to like talk about food. Yet really the answer with the food, quite frankly, and I think you'll probably agree with me, is just go back to nature. Like, it's not rocket science. When people ask me about carbs and fats and, like, you know, proteins and how many calories, none of that. Just make sure that it has one ingredient. And if it has one ingredient, awesome, eat it. You know, and if you understand, like, each one of those elements came from God's garden, awesome. But let's back up just for a moment here, because autoimmune conditions, and I promise you, some of the people listening to this they have. So it could be type 1 diabetes, it could be psoriasis, it could be Hashimoto's, it could be celiac disease. I can go on and on and on. There's probably, I don't know, there's like 80 different autoimmune conditions, and every year there's more. And this is real interesting. If you've been diagnosed, rheumatoid arthritis is usually one of the more popular ones. If you've been diagnosed with one, there's a likelihood in the first 3 years you'll get your second one. By year 10, there's a good chance you're going to have 5, unless you put the brakes on. In this, Kris, I know that you know, you started off saying that sometimes it's a struggle on a daily basis. But does that creep into your head that you could revisit all this stuff if you don't stick to your game plan?
Yeah, it makes sense, right? I mean, the antibodies are coming in there, and I'm always like, you think they're like so laser focused, like they're just going to this one little area. It's like, obviously it's all connected in there, right? So it's really just, like you said, the epigenetics part before, it's where you're weakest, that you're going to express those first. And then if you keep eating the junk, it's going to then just go out to the rest of your body. So luckily Hashimoto's is a really common, and you can even get your medical doctor to do it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a website called stopthethyroidmadness.com. It is a very text-heavy website. It's actually put together by thyroid patients from all over the world with what has worked and what hasn't worked. I haven't gone to it in a while, but she had a PDF on there that you could print out and bring to your medical doctor and say, this is what I would like you to run. And they look at you like you're insane, but at least you get all the boxes checked, because it's important for you to know. And then from there, I think, because that's free, usually if you have health insurance. Mm-hmm. Then from there, if you got any signs or whatever, the next step could be to reach out, you know, to someone that you're gonna have to pay out of pocket, or you just pay out of pocket and make it a priority. I mean, most people sitting here, you know, watching on their iPhones or their laptops can probably afford it. It's just changing priorities a little bit. You know, there are some people who legitimately can't afford to see a natural health practitioner, and that is an injustice in this country. But usually if you have health insurance, the labs are covered by the insurance. You just got to pay the practitioner to kind of read them correctly and run the right ones. So it's worth it. It might be $500,000. But I don't have type 1 diabetes because of it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a big deal. And 80 million people are estimated to have autoimmune conditions. And I know it's way more. It's way more.
Yeah. And I think what you said, that you got to do your homework. Like, you know, I always think about like how much energy we put into maybe like buying a car or something like that. You know, like weeks of research and all that kind of stuff. If we put that same type of care and passion and, you know, intention back into your provider, really your teammates or really people you're hiring to work for you, I think that's what's really important. And that's what I encourage even the people that do for me. I hope I'm almost being pre-interviewed. You know, hopefully they see my content at work and they say, well, maybe I want this guy to work for me or not. But that's the thought process that should take place here. All right, Karen, are we getting any questions that we should be answering at this point?
Yeah, so we've got one from Kathleen. She asks, what about fibromyalgia? Is that an autoimmune condition?
You know, interesting. The answer is technically no, but I will say this about fibromyalgia. A lot of people have it, but it is the writing on the wall. Listen, if you've got fibromyalgia is a conglomeration of all different things going wrong at the same time and creating this body that is just in pain. Now, we technically say we have this many points and this type of responders, but bottom line, when it comes to something like fibromyalgia. It is a mosaic of issues going wrong, and it's time to clean them all up. So if you've been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, I will tell you 100% fixable, curable, that you can do 99, well, at least 90% of it on your own, and you just need a little guidance, but you'll have to dig in like Kris is talking. You got to get educated, and then you got to use that pain that you got and use it to push you forward into, like, turn that into your passion and eventually into your kind of your purpose there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Humans are interesting. I needed the type 1 diabetic scare, you know, people need a scare sometimes. And I don't know, there's, you know, you hear about these college kids doing COVID parties, right? Like, I think when we're younger, we don't have it. Have you heard about that? Like they're having parties trying to get it and taking bets on who the first person would be to get it. Right. But that just shows you how silly you are when you're young. You're not thinking of these things yet. So there's a lot of education that needs to change, obviously, in the country, just for preventative stuff would be nice. But I don't know if you can a smart kid, you know, I mean, when you're young, I don't know if you can fix that. We're just not smart yet.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, a couple more questions about organic food as well. Judy asks, can the grocery stores that have organic foods be trusted as being truly organic? What are the best places to shop organic, and are there any online solutions?
Okay, so let me just like put this to rest, okay? Facebook, love and hate, right? There are lobbyist groups that write articles that bash organic, and they're funded by the soda companies, the chemical companies. I mean, there's so much fake news, it really exists. That's why in all the nonsense, you guys just have to go back to nature. I want you to imagine an airplane with a crop duster dumping thousands of pounds of pesticides from the air onto your food, right? They had to figure out a way for it not to kill the food because they needed to kill the weeds. So that's what all the science food is. Those people are making billions of dollars. Bayer just bought Monsanto for $68 billion. This kind of money, they're having people sit there, write articles to kind of bash organic. And not only do they bash it and try to get us to not believe in it, but they're also lobbying the USDA agriculture, who creates the organic standards called the National Organic Program. So they're trying to lessen the standards of what it means to be organic. So is organic perfect? No. I think Trump tried to lessen the standards, the welfare standards for animals during this last farm bill. What the hell are you even thinking about farm animals right now, right? But that comes from the big farms, the factory farms that don't want to have to do those standards, and they see the organic numbers rising, and so they're lobbying to make it easier for them to sell organic food. So there are sometimes food coming in from China that's certified organic, could be a problem. There have been some reports that that's a problem, but here's how it works. They're all private companies. QAI, Oregon Tilth, all the ones you see on the back, the government, you have to use a private company to get your product certified to those national standards. So the companies are companies. So some are legit, more so than others. But the big ones that you see on most of the packages, QAI and Oregon Tilth, they're legit. I've gone through them. You have to provide the documentation that what you're buying is organic, and not just when you get certified, but you have to prove we made this many batches a year, and this is what's in a batch, and here's our sales, and here's our invoices that matches what we bought, right? So there's accountability. The thing is, the National Organic Program, like the standards are like 1 million pages, no one's gonna read it. So that's just what I tell people with organic food is, yes, you can trust it. It's the starting point though, but don't be fooled by that. Flip over that package if it's not a 1 ingredient food, like Bart says, and read the ingredients. There's organic junk food, there's organic candy, there's organic ice cream. I think of it as food that we had probably in the 60s and the 50s before they really started, actually even before that, before they really started like agribusiness and dumping chemicals on it. So it's just a starting point. If you ever see anything that claims regenerative or with the certification of a biodynamic, right now that's your gold standard of food. That's farmers going back in, regenerating the soil, making sure it's grown in a totally natural eco environment on the farm. Biodynamic is really, really cool. So, but there's very, very few biodynamic foods right now. And there's new organic labels coming out. Like, I think one's called Beyond Organic. There's a glyphosate residue-free certification, so that all these people know that there's some problems with organic, so they're trying to do better, but use it as a starting point. And it has nothing to do with the grocery store. It's all about the brand. So, you know, unless it's like you gotta do your research on the brands. You know, you can't listen to this and listen to me and think I'm going to give you the answer. You got to do your own research. You're putting the food in your body. It's your body. Like, we don't really think about that. It's literally your body. It's all you have. It's all you have in this life. It's guaranteed. And we're just like, I don't even look at that. Put it in. Like, you don't even look at it. Oh my God, that's kind of weird, right? Like, how could you not look at what you're putting in there? Like, not just from like, oh, I'm so healthy person, but just like a kind of practical, like, isn't that crazy? We don't even look. We're all heart smart. Great. It's not heart smart. Yeah.
I think that's a great point, Kris. And I think you said earlier that there's certain foods you look at that you wouldn't consider putting in your body, and that takes a little time. And I'm the same way now. And nowadays, because I love to fast and so healthy for it, I'd just rather go without food than put bad food in my body. And there's a line that we got to draw there. And that's a little tough. And listen, I'm not, for everyone that still hasn't got to that space mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, I guess what I would say is don't beat yourself up, because there's no evidence in your entire life that has anyone ever told you to be consciously putting good food into your body. So it's a journey. And I think, I know on our end of it, we're always looking at foods. And do I trust the grocery stores? I do. I trust them the best that they can do. I think the best tools that they have. I don't think anyone's out there facetiously like switching labels or anything like that. But I do have a question for you. And then Karen, I want to get some more questions here before we wrap up. So Kris, if you had to tell everyone, and they're starting off and maybe budget is a concern, because organic foods can cost a little more. I say that just cheap foods, just, like crappy food just is cheap, but good food is what it is. But if they had to prioritize and put their money into foods, into these 3 foods, which order would you put these? Animal meats, eggs, chicken, fish, beef products, vegetables, or fruits? Which order would you put them in the importance of organic?
I mean, I personally would start with the animal products. It's there's a lot going on there with factory farming.
All right. And then what would you be number 2 for you? I'm putting you on this spot. I know.
Fruits and vegetables are probably equal. I don't know. I mean, you probably have a smarter answer than me. I think there's some, they say, that absorb more than others.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to bring it up. And you hit it right on. I know we didn't plan that before, but I would have said the exact same thing. So we hear a lot about the dirty dozen and stuff like that. And it takes our eyes off the target, quite frankly. So listen, meaning there's food lists out there and say some of these you're okay if you don't buy organic because you can't spray it. Still, if you're using a GMO seed, listen, we're still putting the chemical deep within our body. The reason I usually recommend your animal foods as being your cleanest first is because those are the ones that get the dirtiest, quite frankly. They carry, remember, that cow is eating food that's pre-digested for us to go into our body easier. So I think when it comes to those and they have natural fats, they can carry more good stuff, but they can also carry more bad stuff and have much more of an impact on our hormones. So I usually say, let it be all your animal products, put your, bang where your buck is right there, and then your vegetables, and then your fruits, which really are going to be a smaller group anyways, and those are a lot of your carbs and sugars. So that would be the order, where I think right now, a lot of people think when they go to the grocery store, they grab the organic apple first, but then get the processed chicken. And I would flip that over and get the organic chicken, pasture-raised organic chicken, and then, and the apple, whatever. All right, Karen, you got a couple more questions? You got a couple more questions?
We did. I mean, this one you kind of answered a bit in that, is because they was asking, Noreen asks, are there any fruits and vegetables that because of the way they're grown, like with a hard skin, pineapples, etc., that don't need to be bought organic?
Well, I think things go in systemically. I think food is about soil, true organic food. It's like the health of the soil. I mean, I'm a purist, It's not to say if I'm stuck somewhere, I'd probably eat fruits and veggies that aren't organic. I certainly do when I go out to dinner. I don't know. I mean, things like avocados, you know, they grow in these giant orchards. I think we could probably dive into looking like actually how farmers farm these crops and what needs to be sprayed and what doesn't, more so than others. I'm not a farmer, but you know, I luckily can buy all organic, so I do. It tastes so much better. I mean, have you had a conventional tomato? It's horrible. It doesn't even, you know, it's like wax over it. And not only do they pick these things so much before they're ripe, but they also gas them before they bring them to the grocery stores to ripen them up at the magical miracle right before they got to your store. You ever thought about how that happens? So they're gassing them.
And I think, though, what you said, people don't realize like almost the difference until you've had the good one. You know, they're used to the conventional tomato, so they don't even realize that it doesn't taste good until they yeah, right. We got a bunch of questions. We'll just do a couple. What about, is there any way to detox from glyphosate?
I mean, detoxing is probably Dr. Bart's area. But man, they've tested it in newborns. Like, it is pervasive. It's really here. And we can thank Monsanto for that, as well as DDT and BCPs. And thanks a lot.
Yeah, you know, just saying the detox, it starts with make sure you're not putting any more fuel on the fire. And the moment you do that, your body is built to detox. We forget that our bodies are incredible at detoxification. And if all you did, so if you stop putting fuel on the fire and you were putting in nature's best, you would actually have a detoxing machine rolling. And of course, we can go in deeper and deeper in that. But the answer is yes, you can detox, but you got to stop putting fire on the fuel on the fire.
Yeah. So the next question from Donna, I think this is going to be a whole episode, but we'll just touch on it. Donna said, do we also need to be concerned with our personal care products, skincare and cosmetics? These ingredients go into your skin as well.
I mean, it's your largest organ, right? It's where about 20%, correct me, Bart, if I'm wrong, of your immune system is kind of located. I mean, what goes in and what goes on your body has got to have a defense. It makes sense. And so there's a really cool video, and actually you might find this interesting, is that really before that canola oil happened, I watched a video called, it's on YouTube, you can watch it, it's called The Story of Stuff by a Berkeley professor. It's a little sketch video, and it kind of talks about like mass consumerism. And then she did the story of cosmetics. I really liked it, so I watched a few of them and I was like, what? Stuff in cosmetics is gnarly. And it's so Story of Cosmetics, watch it, and really you should just put, I mean, it matters. It matters. I think you can end up using a lot less of products and quality. And again, guys, it's your body. It's on your body. You know, they smell better. When people come in with like toxic perfumes, it's because I have a thyroid issue is one of the symptoms, but I'm just like, whoa, like I can really smell the petroleum-based perfumes. So nature has all of the answers that we need. And I would just say, yes, it's very important.
And I love that you just keep coming back to like, it's your body, right? Like we need to think of it like that. It is, it's the only one we've got. So we've got to look after it. What about I don't know if we want to just quickly go over your Hydrate product. We didn't touch on that. Could you tell us a bit about that? And I think you've got a special for people tonight.
You know, before, let me chime in real quickly. Okay. So, and this was something I was going to ask you about, and I wish we had a little more time, but we can make time right now. So I'm a big advocate, and you hit on it earlier about soil and the soil and the basic fundamentals that we get from soil, like minerals and vitamins and herbs, and even the sea. You think of that as an extension of it. And minerals, from my position, sometimes people are always looking for this magic super duper pill that I'm going to give someone, like some super adaptogen herb. And don't get me wrong, I've got all those. But I also always start people with the fundamentals. There's fundamental electrolytes, the fundamentals that we're talking about, like dirt and water, like the things that our body needs to survive way before counting grams of protein. So Kris made this incredible product called Hydrate. And so I'm like Kris, I'm the one who spends, and I just chuck products. We've got cabinets full of products that everyone would be glad to eat. And the crazy thing is I won't give them away because I can't give away crap to a friend. So, but that's how we do our research. We'll order from Amazon and I get it. I'm like, man, I missed this part. And it just sits there. And I think, how can I throw this away? So Kris produced this program, this product called Hydrate. And my favorite thing about it, girl, you got Himalayan sea salt in it. It's designed to, so if you guys hear me talk about sea salt all the time and the power of salt, it has 80, 90, most Himalayan, like a Himalayan sea salt, probably is close to 92 minerals. I don't care what supplement you're taking. I don't care what food you're eating. You can't replace that. Like, that is powerful. And the fundamentals of bringing some of these things in. And Kris, I want you to talk about it a little bit more, but I'm always looking for something good to hydrate with. If you've been following me for 10, 20 years now, you always know when you come in Dr. Bart's office, say how well you're hydrating. And when I put my hands on it, it doesn't lie. The skin never lies, the tone of your body doesn't lie, how your eyesight, all of that stuff. So hydration is huge. So give me the quick, 2 minutes of your product, Hydrate, and then maybe we can offer it to the peeps here tonight, because this is what Kelly and I use at home. This is what I use after power yoga. I use it, big part of my immune strategy. Maybe that's another show as well, but nonetheless, let's hear about it.
Well, thanks, Bart. Yeah, it's I struggle with hydration my whole career. I downed Powerade. There's 28 in a 28-ounce bottle of Powerade. There's 50 grams of sugar, 50. So, I mean, it's literally criminal. And there's also table salt in there and stripped down potassium. So I just needed something. I hate water. I just hate it. And so I wanted something to make my water taste good. And we use it. Every single electrolyte powder on the market uses a flavoring. Those are made in the lab, so we take organic lemon juice and we dry it. And then we just mix it with nature's electrolytes, which are coconut water powder. It doesn't taste like coconut water, which is great. That has that thick mouth feel. So it's just in there to boost the potassium naturally a little bit. The Himalayan salt. It tastes like lemonade. There's no sugar. There's 1 gram from the lemons, and it's we use a little bit of stevia, organic stevia. It has to be organic. We use 0.01 grams out of an 8-gram serving. So it doesn't have that gnarly aftertaste. It's super high quality. And it just helps me down the water. I drink over a gallon of water a day now, and it's just changed my life. I could not live without it. And I wish I had it when I was competing. And all these electrolyte brands that tell you need sugar to hydrate, they're just lying to you. They're literally lying to you, and they just really piss me off. So we have figured out a way for it to taste good without the sugar. And you can use Dr. Bart on our site, goodonyourorganic.com, and you can get a deal.
Sweet. Yeah, hydration is one of the simplest things that I think we overlook. And same thing. I talk all day, and people forget that the number one way you dehydrate in life, you think it's sports, it's talking.
Yeah.
And I talk all day long. So we're expelling fluids. So it's so important. So that I use this during my day, when I'm seeing patients. I won't eat, but I'll use this, and it's incredible. It literally tastes like lemonade, and I'll mix a little bit of calcium in there at times here. So Karen, I know we got some more questions here. Let's not leave them hanging here. Let's see if we can rip off a couple of these questions real quick before we go. Kris, can you give us another 2-3 minutes?
Yep.
Awesome.
Okay. Awesome. What have we got? Another one. I think we probably, Kathleen's got a couple of questions here. My doctor said she wouldn't do any more than the basic thyroid test, even if I paid for them. I mean, I think that's potentially
change your doctor. That's horrible.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, that's enough. That's the answer. Okay. So just move on. It's okay. That's their expertise. That's what they do. Let's let them stay in their box, or whatever it may be, and just move on. I'll be happy to help you if you want, or there's literally thousands of men and women just like myself. So it's easy.
Yeah, for sure. Because Kathleen also asks, how do we do a kidney cleanse? And I mean, that might be a bigger question than what we've got time for now. And I think that, yeah.
I'll get you just real quickly, kidneys are downstream from the liver. So liver takes on everything that goes into the human body, on your skin or in your mouth. So really what we're talking about is stop putting fuel on the fire. And I'm not trying to make this sound too simple or belittling the detox. Because we've heard so much about these massive detox. It starts with not putting it in so the body has an opportunity to get it out. And then if we start putting the right things in, you don't actually have to be a doctor to know that nature has so many ways to help us heal if we put the right tools in the body. And you just keep putting them in and it'll detox. Remember, kidney is downstream from the liver. If you got a kidney issue, you got stuff going in your body that probably shouldn't be there. That's a liver issue.
Yeah, awesome. The other one we got a couple of questions about is asthma. What about asthma? Is that an autoimmune disease? And what nutritional things should be done to protect against asthma?
Asthma is not an autoimmune condition. Think of asthma as you're having an issue getting air out. You have an inflammatory issue. So we're going back to nature again. We're going to clean up our diet, down-regulate inflammation, get the sugars out. There's usually an emotional link to some anxiousness, but if you get the sugar out and you get better oxygen in the air. So for example, hydrate. So whoever's asking that question, I would tell you to get yourself a really good hydration tool, like the one we're talking about tonight, and start hydrating to a point where you think that this might be more than usual. Just consuming it all throughout the day. Let it be your only source of liquids coming into your body, and do it for long periods of time. 30, 40 days, stop putting fuel on the fire and see just those actions there. Listen, I grew up with asthma, and I've shared that with a lot of our listeners, and I was chronically dehydrated. When I started drinking more water, my asthma got better. And I thank my chiropractor for, 20 to 30 plus years ago, told me that. He said, man, he saw me with my little inhaler, and I'd put it on the table every time I go to get adjusted. He said, Bart, why don't you just start hydrating better? You open up that pathway, you'll breathe better. I was like, well, that's difficult. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we get, I think the Facebook people are asking for the hydrate link on Facebook. So maybe someone could put it on there as well. Awesome.
Cool. We'll make sure that the hydrate link is on Facebook. The hydrate link is in the group here for everybody as well. So, all right, let's do a last question, and then we've got a last question for you, Kris.
Okay. Then we got Kris, you're gonna be on the hot seat in just a moment here.
You are. So it says, I've read that most sea salt also contains microplastics. What about microplastics?
Oh, microplastics are gnarly. They're even in the air we breathe, they're saying now. So I'm a big fan of the Himalayan pink salt because it's not from the sea. Unfortunately, we have completely polluted our seas. And the real legit stuff comes pretty deep in the cave in Pakistan. So just look for the source, look for the, there's probably fake brands out there. They're dyeing pink, people do some crazy stuff. But I think it's a bummer. We used to use Celtic sea salt and we changed. But microplastics, can you believe that? Literally, they've measured them in the air.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. This is why we got to control what we can control. There's certain things we can't, you're off-gassing toxins from your couch and your paint and your clothes and the chemicals all the time in the air. So just don't worry about that stuff so much. You got enough to worry about just after this show.
Yeah, and I love that. Worry about the things that you can control, and don't worry about the things that you can't. Because otherwise, you can get on this kind of role where you're worrying, where you're getting more stressed about this stuff than and then it's doing more harm than good. So
it really is.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so our last question we always ask everybody is, we like to make health simple. That's our show. So we like to see what is one action item that all the listeners today can take away to take them towards their goal of becoming superhuman, which is what we what we call leveling up your health and getting to that next level. So what's one action they can take away from this that they can start right away?
I have 10 simple things, but I will say one. I would change the water you drink to natural spring water. And if you buy bottled water, make sure it's never distilled or purified. And if you're traveling around, you need water. There's spring water almost in every cooler of every store, but it's water from nature. You can go months without food. You can go 3-4 days without water. What does that tell you about the importance of water? Not to mention, if you're downing a bunch of water, trying to chug your water, trying to stay hydrated, and you're using purified water, you're depleting your minerals. So you're wasting money, wasting your time, and putting in pharmaceuticals, microscopic pieces of toilet paper, all kinds of crazy stuff in tap water. So I'm not a water snob, but I totally am a water snob. And I think you should just spring water. I mean, $5 bottles of water, so I get it, but it's your body. And water is important. So there you go.
I love that. That's awesome. And do you ship your Hydrate product everywhere?
Yeah.
Internationally?
Not Australia. It's way too expensive, but we ship it everywhere in the US.
That's all right. I forgive you. No, all good. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We have loved having you. We so appreciate everything. There's so many questions. I think we could have talked for another whole hour. So thank you for all the value you've shared with us today.
You got it. Thank you guys. You guys are healing the world.
Kris, I love you. Thanks for being on tonight, and hopefully we get to see each other soon.
All right. I wish you lived in California.
Yeah. Maybe one day.
All right. Good night, guys. See you next week.
We'll see you.